Hey guys, my name is Ryan, welcome to HitScan and welcome to another Omen video. Proud sponsors of the Overwatch League and of course the PC providers over there too. We're in the off season of the Overwatch League, it ended last month, but I did want to highlight Sombra. To cut a long story short, in between the end of the Overwatch League and now, we had the Contenders Gauntlet, which was the best teams in Contenders from regions like NA, EU and of course Korea, battled it out to decide who was the best Contenders team. The final was between Element Mystic, which is a Korean team, and Atlanta Academy, which of course is NA. In this game, we saw a lot of Sombra, and the compositions that we used for Sombra were fairly interesting and actually broke through what we would deem meta with Orisa Sigma, Reaper, /Mei, /Doomfist, /whatever. And of course, the supports being Lucio Moira. Not only that, Sombra recently got buffed onto the live servers, and whilst it hasn't really done much for a pick rate at the moment, we all know that Sombra doesn't really need much in order for her to become meta, and I do think that she's got very scary recently, and I really wanted to highlight it, to the point that I think we might see it in the World Cup. So of course we're going to look at the game between Element Mystic and Atlanta Academy, but I also did want to highlight Doomfist very quickly. Doomfist was nerfed on the live servers while Sombra was buffed, but I do think that Doomfist is still going to be popular and still played quite a bit, just because of how good he is against barrier metas. From what I've spoken to with other pros that are playing in the World Cup, it's generally going to be similar with what the tanks are running. We haven't seen Roadhog pop up at all really, no Diva or anything. It's mostly still going to be Orisa Sigma, but of course it does depend on maps and maybe the secret compositions that they're going to use. My point being is that the main tank line is still most likely going to be double barrier, which means that Doomfist is always going to be good against that. The nerfs that he got was to his charge up time with his rocket punch and also the shield that he gets back from his passive, but realistically I don't know if those changes are enough to stop Doomfist from being played in these specific scenarios. So whilst I did say that Sombra is a little bit better, we did need to highlight Doomfist's nerf. But of course this isn't the first time that we've seen Sombra Doomfist being used in a composition that is quite oppressive. Let's go back to Goat's comp. Here we are back in June for Korean Contenders, and hey look, it's Element Mystic again. They're playing against O2 Blast in their grand finals of that season, and as you notice in O2 Blast are running the old typical Goats comp. It's been a while since we've seen that, but as you're seeing, Element Mystic are again running Sombra Doomfist, and this is kind of why it works so well and why it's really good against oppressive metas. But it is worth noting that Sparkle and Doha are the best Doomfist and Sombras respectively in the world, so it does make sense why this works for them, but there are a few other examples of other teams that do use this, hence why we're talking about this now. Why does Sombra work so well against Goat's comp? Well, she's great being able to get in behind and hack specific targets. The good thing about Goat's comp support wise is that you do have some fairly brittle heroes in the backline that you can maybe pick off. The likes of Zenyatta and Ana were popular back then, so hacking them and having the Doomfist follow up with that was sure to be a very successful kind of strategy. Of course, another big area is Sombra's EMP. It's one of the strongest ults in the game, especially for teams that like to stay grouped up, which they will be if you have a team running a lot of Lucio and Moira. How the current meta plays is very similar to Goats in how aggressive and deathball-y it can be, so of course it makes sense that Sombra would be good here. Not to mention that a lot of the enemies have a get out of jail free card. Doomfist can like uppercut, give himself a bit more shield, Reaper can Rayform, make an ice block, Moira can fade, Lucio can boop, Sigma can suck, Orisa can fortify. Everybody is something in case they end up in a tight squeeze. So having EMP not only shuts those down, meaning that they don't have any defensive mitigation, but also destroys any barriers in the way, which is great if teams are running Orisa Sigma. So when it comes to how impactful an ultimate can be, again, EMP is at the top of the list, more so than anything else right now. But most importantly, I suppose it really causes a lot of discomfort for the team that's been affected by the Doomfist and the Sombra. You see throughout the game with O2 Blast that O2 start changing to pretty interesting stuff, such as Winston Diva in the way to sort of get away and get around the Sombra Doomfist the Element Mystic are running. If you have the coordination and you could follow up on specific targets, then that's where Doomfist and Sombra work really well. Hacking other targets and having Doomfist follow up, or just, you know, going to be assassins together, picking off targets very quickly in your own little dive group. That's how it was successful back then, and that's how successful it is now. It's worth adding that this wasn't used all the time by Element Mystic. They switched to stuff like Pharah, Bastion, Reaper. They used a lot of the DPS options. It was mostly on Control that we did see see this combination really showing how strong it is on the likes of Eichenwald, for example. Element Mystic ran Bastion and Pharah because Bastion Pharah is very good there, and ran some more typical stuff on Horizon Lunar Colony for 2CP. But Sombra was used nonetheless. It makes sense where she's been used on Control because it's a very scrappy, brawly kind of composition, and the term brawly has been used to describe where the meta is going right now, that we're seeing less of the likes of Bastion as an example. A little bit more Pharah, but going off some of the pros, I won't mention who, because of like Overwatch World Cup strategies. But now would be an ideal time for Sombra to come back. She recently got buffed, and the tank lineup of Arisa Sigma is a little bit weak. It might give Sombra a little bit more wiggle room. But why are you mentioning this now, Ryan? The Gauntlet is over, even the Overwatch League is over for quite a while. Why mention this now? And that's because there was a team last year in the World Cup that did run an awful lot of Sombra. They may be looking at what Element Mystic have been doing and want to capitalize it on themselves, and that is Canada. Canada last year in the World Cup did run an awful lot of Sombra in their Sombra Goats. It would make sense where they have the likes of Chauffeur and Agilities on their side, but it was the whole idea of Canada like to run these strategies under Jane and the rest of the Canada squad, and considering that Element Mystic did show the impact that Sombra can have, even now, even in this double barrier meta, it might go to show exactly where we see this composition used, even by the Koreans themselves. The only problem there, I suppose, is that neither Sparkle nor Doha are in the World Cup squad for 2019, and this kind of composition really does rely on you having a good Doomfist as well as a good Sombra to follow through. I'm not necessarily saying that this is going to become the meta, but it is an option for teams to run if they want to, and I feel that as time goes on, maybe Arisa starts to get a bit weaker post nerfs and all that jazz, Sombra Doomfist might come back in that fashion. It's not the most exciting for us to maybe be on the receiving end of it, but it's certainly very excited to watch, and I'm really interested to see where this composition goes. I wanted to do a nice quick video on this. Of course, there's a lot of focus on the future of Overwatch at this point, so I didn't want to do something too meta related, but of course you could expect an Omen video sometime next month going over some of the cooler stuff that we see in the World Cup. I'm very excited for Team UK to knock out Team USA again, and maybe even win the World Cup. Who knows at this point. Korea do look spicy though. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Omen for helping support this video. We recently went to EGX with them. It was a hell of a lot of fun. We even got to cast some Overwatch, and it was just really good. It was actually a really nice convention, and they had a pretty nice booth as well. You can check out all of their details in the description below. But thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.